Okay, I'm thinking of a country. They invented things like fuel cells, nitrogen and phosphorus fertilizers, plexiglass, plastic, commercial computing, motion picture. Any idea what it is? Okay, here's a couple more. Oktoberfest. They've created ecofascism and gave us Albert Einstein.
Wait, what was the last part?
Yeah, Albert Einstein. He was part of Project Paperclip, where the US brought over a bunch of Nazi scientists to work on and create things such as NASA.
No, the other part, before that.
The other part. They've created ecofascism and...
Just when you think history couldn't get any worse for the Germans, you learn about this.
Most people associate German atrocities to something like Nazis, the Holocaust, and all that. But the actual poisonous roots of the Green Movement that we all see today started in Germany. In 1915, a guy named Ernst Moritz Arndt, sorry about the terrible pronunciation of all the German names and words moving forward, he wrote an article called The Care and Conservation of Forests. Now, this was written at the dawn of the German Industrial Revolution, so this idea alone was radical. This idea stymied the progress and brought in the ideology of biocentrism. From his article, I quote, "When one sees nature in a necessary connectedness and interrelationship, then all things are equally important. Shrub, worm, plant, human, stone, nothing first or last, but all one single unit." Now let's fast forward to today, where we see Germans' absolute abhorrent push towards renewables. It's become some weird dominatrix of green energy and green revolution groups, which are basically masturbating virtues of environmentalism all over everybody else. The nation of Germany, which was adored by virtually every country in the world, where so much so that most of Europe was actually terrified that Germany was advancing so quickly that they would be able to take over every single nation. However, their renewables have absolutely failed abysmally, and now have become the limp dick on a porn set of pussies. But how did this idea fester in Germany? Let's go over that. The rise of ecofascism started in Germany. It started with Arndt, who loved nature but hated Slavs, Jews, and the French. Arndt and his most prominent student, William Heinrich Riehl, started something called the Völkisch movement. It created ethnocentric populism and nature mysticism. This movement was supposed to bring out the natural cosmic life spirit, a back to nature approach. However, what was completely ignored was culture, industrialism, and rationalism. Here's a quote from the time. "The Germans were in search of a mysterious wholeness that would restore them to primeval happiness, destroying the hostile milieu of urban industrial civilization that the Jewish conspiracy had foisted upon them." This anti-Semitic, mystical racism, romanticist purity became an anti-enlightenment and anti-industrial movement, which was hidden under the guise of doing what's best for nature. In 1867, a German zoologist, Ernst Haeckel, combined monism with Völkisch to create the seedbed of what would become National Socialism, or the Nazi Party. Here are his thoughts on this, and I quote, "Thus, for the monists, perhaps the most pernicious feature of European bourgeoisie civilization was the inflated importance which it attached to the idea of man in general, to his existence and to his talents, and to the belief that through his unique rationale faculties, man could essentially recreate the world and bring about a universally more harmonious and ethically just social order. Humankind was an insignificant creature when viewed as part of the measure against the vastness of the cosmos and the overwhelming forces of nature." This anti-human movement kept gaining more momentum. It was embedded in pseudoscience racism, anti-urbanism, anti-industrialism, and anti-humanism. And it festers this totalitarian mindset against anybody that opposes this. The problem is, this movement grew rapidly in the first decades of the 20th century. Now, to drive an agenda like this, you need a strong propaganda campaign. So who's easier to brainwash than the youth? And that's exactly what they did. The driving force of this entire movement was the German youth. They quickly absorbed this counterculture narrative, and while they echoed Eastern philosophies, nature mysticism, hostility to reason, impulse to community, citing a deep cultural crisis, allowing emotions to make the decisions over actual social issues. Now, this movement aligned perfectly with the National Socialist agenda. This natural dystopian utopia festered, and thousands of youth joined the Nazi Party. In 1933, there was about 100,000 youth in the Nazi Party, and by 1939, there was 5.3 million. The propaganda was foisted upon the German youth at the time. They poisoned the seed to poison the plant. So it's pretty evident that the youth were kind of used to propel this Nazism, environmentalism forward by justifying this natural mysticism which created its own religion. Hitler and Himmler themselves were actually stout environmentalists in this kind of sense, as well as vegans and animal lovers. Hitler often talked about the future being renewable energy. This eco-fascist utopia mesmerized the people. And actually, out of these conservation groups, 60% of the members of the conservation groups belonged to the Nazi Party. As a contrast, only about 10% of adult men at the time were in the Nazi Party, and 25% of lawyers and teachers made up the Nazi Party. Now, this Blood and Soil campaign was made popular by a guy named Dar. He was the agriculture minister from 1933 to 1942, and he had the fourth largest budget out of any sector of government at the time. So it shows the importance of agriculture to the Nazis, especially this radical eco-fascist idea. Dar popularized this blood and soil ideology. Here's what they had to say about Dar. It was Dar who gave the ill-defined anti-civilization, anti-liberal, anti-modern, anti-latent, anti-urban sentiments of the Nazi elite and a foundation in the agrarian mystique. And it seems Dar had an immense influence on the ideology of National Socialism. Here's what Dar said. He said, "The concept of blood and soil gives us the moral right to take back as much land in the East as is necessary to establish a harmony between the body of our Volk and the geopolitical space." So they're all pushing for this takeover. It was the German, at the time, this ideology, pushing it to fix the earth. He also had a very strict criteria on respecting wetlands, forests, and the ecologically sensitive areas. Nazis stressed the importance of the wilderness, and they opposed monoculturism, they opposed wetland drainage, they opposed chemical agriculture, and they called for an agrarian revolution towards a more peasant, simple type of farming. Now, because this eco-fascist movement and environmental terrorist movement kept growing, they were a lot more sympathetic to hearing more radical ideas. They pushed for an all-encompassing protection of Mother Earth. They were all prepared to sign on for this Protection of Mother Earth Act, except for one person who said it does not make sense, and that was the Minister of Economy. Imagine that. Rudolf Hess was essentially the leader of the Green Wing, and he was third in command. So anything that happened would always have to come across his desk. Now, he was even more strict than Hitler and Himmler on veganism and environmentalism. He was absolutely tenacious. He passed bills on protecting certain plant species, certain animal species, protected forests, and created the first forest reserve in Europe. They had this whole thing, environmentalism, set up so you could not move a rock in an area without getting the permission from the Third Reich. It was absolute control of everything. And what better way to control people's movements all over than controlling the places they can move? So why is all this important? So this is important because today we see these movements still happening. They're still going on. And people are doing absolutely radical things in terms of environmentalism. Now what they do is they place environmental life or nature over human species. Therefore, when humans die, they essentially applaud because they go, well, they're wrecking everything anyway. And that's probably one of the biggest concerns. All this did was really create a justification for absolutely obliterating a bunch of people everywhere. It became an excuse for mass murder and genocide. You look at all these eco-radicals today. So take it, for example, when they stormed that Hutterite colony in Alberta, and they actually took 2 turkeys from them. Now, do you think those turkeys are still alive today? Do you think that they're most likely died an absolutely horrendous death? More than likely, but that's not the point. The point of the whole thing isn't that what you're doing. The point is what they want you to do. And that's where this eco-radicalism comes in. And we see this ingrained everywhere. We see this now with this UN Agenda 2030, where they want to essentially take away all the farmland, and control all the farmland. That's eco-radicalism. And the roots of that whole movement started in Nazi Germany. These people can't see what they're doing is wrong. They have no ability to, they've lost all logic. They've lost all ability to reason, and they've lost all logic. And we see that all the time too. COVID, for example. Like you have to have no ability to logically think this through to buy into it. And you can't defy logic. If you feel comfortable defying your logic all the time, then you will live a very illogical life. If you can't figure out why and how things work, then you're not able to make rational decisions. And that's essentially what these people did, was they defied their own logic. They defied the ability to reason themselves. And with that, you need somebody else to do that thinking for you, because you can't piece together how the whole thing works. So here's basically what's happening. Here's what's kind of an example. I took my kids skiing, and to go up one part of the hill, you have this rope that you basically just hold on to, and it pulls you up. It's not very steep. The rope doesn't go very fast. So I'm up, my kids are behind me. I think one of my kids is in front of me, one is behind me. And this woman can't hold on herself, and she's slowly sliding down the rope. And the person behind her, so she's a weak link. She can't hold on. But instead of letting go and letting people move forward, she holds on and slowly slides down into the guy behind her. Well, this guy, he's not strong enough to hold up this woman. So he ends up sliding back too. And they're coming to me, and I'm yelling for this woman to get off the rope. She will not let go. She will not let go. I tell her, let go of the rope. She gets to the top, and I scoot around her. But meanwhile, the pile up behind me is 12 people long. Now, people are falling over. Like, one of my kids was hit by somebody, a guy behind them, and all this stuff, and it causes this chaotic pileup. And this is the issue, is this extremely weak person that society has created has been able to knock over 12 people and set 12 people back, because their selfish justification of what they should do trumps what is best for everybody else. Now, society's created that person, but it has also created the person behind them, because people would say, well, that guy should have helped the weak up. But it's like, well, society's also created that second person in line who is weak, who can barely hold himself up. So this in turn creates this domino effect backwards. And that's exactly what this environmental movement is. It is the weakest people holding on to that rope and sliding everybody backwards. We don't need them. Nobody needs them. So just the whole point of this is to be vigilant on all of these environmentalist things going on, who these people are, what they're doing. What we realize is they cannot be reasoned with. They have to defy reason to even do this. They don't have the ability to work through anything. They have no logic. And ultimately, they can't contribute to society in any positive way. Their goal is to take society backwards to a stone age. Let's move forward. Now, a place like Germany, where this started, let's see what kind of situation they're into today. So we had those rallies in October of 2019, where they were protesting against the government cutting out chemicals and nitrogen. Now, they're not gonna, compensate them for cutting this. They're making it just a rule. Skip forward to today, and they're still protesting because they're trying to cut all these chemicals. They're trying to cut back on fertilizers. They're cutting back light pollution. And They want to create protected zones. Like, does this sound familiar? Does this sound like another period of time? And this will essentially make it so Germany farms about 7% less land altogether. Now, what will that do to the food supply? But what study is Germany basing all of this stuff on? Why are they cutting out? Why do they want to cut out all of these fertilizers, pesticides, and all that stuff? Well, they used a study that Denmark did that was actually, this Denmark research group was actually funded by the UN, surprisingly, where they said 76% of all biomass, insect flying biomass, has been reduced in the last 27 years. What they fail to mention, using this as a justification, is that they put all of these insects traps on protected land, government land. They never put this on any farmer's land at all. So they put it all on protected land. And then when they weigh the insects, they actually, all the insects they trap, the thousands of insects they trap, they actually take them, kill them, weigh them. So, you know, that knocks a couple out of the population, but these traps aren't, you know, very big anyway. What they fail to mention is that in the first 4 years of this 27-year study, they cut 66% of the sites that they were tracking. I don't know why they suppose that is. Maybe because it wasn't giving them the results they wanted, perhaps. They worked climate change into this model. So they used formulas and algorithms, modeling, they all call it, which is absolute shit. They use this modeling to go, well, we have to try to make the conditions the same. So if it was, 28 degrees and the few hours they had the traps up at that exact same time, then today what they have to do is go, okay, well, we got more insects, perhaps, but there's should actually be less because the weather is different. So this eliminates a whole bunch. We shouldn't even have this much because under the same conditions, we would actually have less. But because the conditions are better right now than it was in 1981, we have to adjust that with a formula. So the more they adjust the formula, the more formulas they play with, the larger the error. So that's how they did it. They manipulated the results to get what they wanted. They pushed the whole thing around this fake model algorithm on protected land, not even on farmers' land. The study's absolutely bogus. So here, in my opinion, is the best part. They say, right in the study, they say, agriculture intensification, such as pesticide usage, year-round tillage, increased use of fertilizers, and frequency of agronomic measures, that we could not incorporate into our analysis. They specifically said they can't take any part of agriculture into their analysis. It doesn't even fit, yet they're using this against agriculture. This is nuts. This is ecofascism. They're making up stories to ruin agriculture. They do this all over the place. They've politicized agriculture, and that's what these people are all after. They've done the same thing in Canada. They've done it in the US. They do it through these groups like Ducks Unlimited that has 14 million acres of land in North America. In the US last year, they made $242 million in profit. Most of that comes from taxpayer money. It's absolutely corrupt. And what's their big thing? Pushing protected wetlands. Oh, where does this come from? Protected forest. Heard that before somewhere. Protection. You have to protect this stuff from people because people are the enemy to these people. You protect stuff that's weak and vulnerable against something that is stronger than it. They put people as the stronger thing that is going to ruin everything. Whether they're going to or not isn't the point, because agriculture has had plenty of time to ruin all the wetlands if they wanted to. So why are they still after it now? Because they get the wetlands and now they're after more. Now they want to change what you're allowed to put on that land. They want to change what you're growing on that land. It's a never-ending cycle. And these people are absolute psychopaths. And that's the thing, is you can't debate them because to play the game, you have to have no ability to be reasonable or any sense of logic. So it's futile. That's why you can never change their minds. But you also see when people go to the other side, no conservative ever goes back and goes, "Woof, liberal now. There's just no way, because to be in that category, you actually have to be retarded. You have to. It's the only way it makes sense. It's unfortunate that they have to punish the logical people. Nature doesn't have a political ideology. Understand that. It is what it is. No farmer is purposely ruining nature. They're not doing it because if they ruin nature, they don't have a job. They don't have any, their land is useless. Their equipment is useless. Everything is useless. The biggest investor in the health of agriculture is the farmer that has to pay for it all and put in the time. Not the guy sitting at the head of the World Economic Forum stealing everybody's fucking money, telling them what to do while he sits on his fucking ass. There's no power there. They don't deserve any power. They don't deserve shit. They should not be regulating anything. They should not be suggesting anything. They should be shutting the fuck up. They can present it to a farmer or somebody in the agriculture sector. And if it makes reasonable and logical sense, there's an upside is greater than the downside, then people will adopt. That's how it works. That's how this whole thing works. That's how progress works. Progress isn't holding the rope and sliding fucking backwards.